Hi, everybody. Happy Groundhog Day. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. And are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. And the top book today is a sci-fi story about tourists traveling to alternate Earths. But before we get to that, we got 4 other books to get through, and we want to get them quickly because the books don't stay free for long. Authors and publishers make their books free as a promotional thing, so you will get into it and read the rest of the series, and then they stop being free, so grab them quickly. Now, we're recording this on February 2nd. If you're watching this later, you can still watch the video, and you might find your next favorite author in it. The book might no longer be free, but it might still be in Kindle Unlimited if you're a member. Kindle Unlimited is where you pay $12 a month and you read all the books you want. All right, so you can also subscribe to our newsletter so you get this list in your email every single Friday afternoon, or subscribe to our channel so you can watch this video every single Friday. That's because every single Friday, our team here at MetaStellar reads the first few chapters of the books on top of Amazon's free sci-fi and fantasy list. Today, I was helped out by assistant fiction editor TERRENCE Smith and editors KRISTIN Noland and Alex KOROLOV. And KRISTIN and TERRENCE are both here today. Hi, KRISTIN. Hi, TERRENCE.
Hello.
Hey there.
This is KRISTIN's first time on the show, so you might recognize her name from our website. She's a book editor who's worked on 70 manuscripts, including 2 bestsellers. We're glad to have her on the team because one of the things she's an expert at is speculative fiction. Thank you for joining us here, KRISTIN.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be here.
And TERRENCE, for those who are new, is a video game journalist for Gamerant. He's a sci-fi author whose novel is going to be serialized by MetaStellar, and he's our assistant fiction editor. And one of the things he is working on is our spring submission cycle. So if you write short stories that are sci-fi, fantasy, or horror, you can submit them to MetaStellar for publication. And if you're interested in that, the links are in the description box below. And we also have 2 anthologies out, our first year and second year anthology. We have merch, links down below. We have mugs, tote bags, and I'm wearing a t-shirt, a MetaStellar t-shirt here. So we have those 2. So yeah.
Give us your money.
Yes, all the money goes to pay for original fiction. All of us are volunteers. This is all volunteer run. Website space is all donated. All the money that comes in through our Patreon supporters and through the merch goes to pay for speculative fiction. Now, without further ado, let's get into the free books because that's why everybody is here. All right, books number 5 on today's list. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Here we go. The title is Hers Untamed by Adler, the first of 5 books in the Hers romantic science fiction series. And by romantic, I mean very, very sexy. The other books in the series are $3 to $4 each. They're not in Kindle Unlimited. And this is the author's first time on our Free Friday list. I am not the target audience for these books. You can tell because of the naked male chest on the cover. I hate romance and all things good. I prefer violence and mayhem in my leisure reading. So, keeping that in mind.
The heart is ice cold.
So, the book does start on a distant planet. So that's a plus. But the entire premise, and I read the first 10 chapters of the book, and I have an issue with it. So the story is about Alyssa, who is a successful executive on this planet, and she's got the money, and she wants to buy a pet. And my first thought is, no, don't buy, adopt, get a rescue pet. But that's not the kind of pet she wants. She wants to buy a sexy guy to keep as a slave. And since the guy is a hybrid of human and an alien species, apparently he's not considered to be like a fully legal being, and people are allowed to keep them as basically sex slaves. And
Did
she
you
wants,
say alien human hybrid?
so yeah, so she's
That
buying,
is straight out the X-Files.
yeah, so she's buying a sexy half human, half alien to keep as a sex slave in a cage in her apartment with a shock collar around his neck, right? And the guy has already been tortured for 3 weeks to try to tame him, and she's going to continue doing that, until he's all the way tamed. And those first few chapters are about him trying to escape, him being beaten and shocked, and then her alternating being nice to him and giving him a bath and feeding him and like torturing him with a shock collar. So, that aside, the book is written in a light, breezy, readable way. So if that kind of premise appeals to you, it is very, very readable. There's a reason the book is on the top of the bestseller list. It's not my kind of thing, so I'm not going to be sticking with it, but it does get explicit, and I'm guessing that eventually she's redeemed somehow and they find love together and escape or something like that. So I'm sure there's some kind of satisfying conclusion, but I personally am not going to stick around to find out. Okay, moving on to book number 4 on today's list is a box set, The Dragon Blood Collection by Lindsay Buroker. It's the first 3 books in the 8-book Dragon Blood fantasy romance series. The other books are $4 to $5 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. And this author has been in this list many, many times, including for this particular box set and a bunch of other series. She also is the host of the Six Figure Authors podcast. I have seen every single episode of that podcast. I recommend it highly. It's a must listen for anyone who wants to write spec fic for a living. Unfortunately, they've scaled back to only a couple of recordings a year lately, which is very sad. But this is exactly my kind of book. Yes, there's a little romance in it, but I'm willing to look past it because of all the daring do and the action and the exciting stuff that's happening. So I love this book. In fact, I first reviewed it a couple years ago. I finished the book. I finished the other 2 books in this box set. I finished the rest of the series, and then I read a whole bunch of other series that Lindsay Buroker wrote. I'm like a huge fan. So, so this book, the first book in this series, is Balanced on the Blade's Edge, and we meet Ridge, who's a talented military man who's sent to manage a prison of murderers and rapists, because he caused an international incident of some kind, a political diplomatic one. And then a mysterious woman shows up who's been asleep for the past 300 years and is the last of a group of sorcerers who used to protect the realm of Iscandia from outsiders. She wants to be reunited with her soul blade, which is like a talking sword of some kind, or a talking knife. And her only way of doing this is to pretend to be one of the prisoners and build a relationship with Ridge. But she's a sorcerer, and in this setting, if he finds out that she's a sorcerer, he has to kill her. So, now, judging by the title, you'd think this would be a sword and sorcery kind of book, and there would be dragons in it. But there really aren't. It's more of a fantasy military kind of book. They have something that passes for airplanes that are powered by some kind of magical artifacts. So it's a more grounded setting, and very, very engrossing. The military has women in it. It feels like a modern military with modern titles. But the country here is a kingdom ruled by a king. So it's kind of like a medieval power structure. So it's a really nice mix for people who like military sci-fi and who like fantasy. I really liked it. So there's the book, in the beginning of the book, there's a battle. and an explosion brought a mountain down on top of Sardell, this sorceress. And a safety device activated, cocooning her inside a magical bubble. And she stayed in this magical bubble for 300 years, surrounded by rocks. And then miners, prisoners from this prison who work in the mines have gotten close to her, and they break through the cocoon where she's kept. And that's how she's released. And the guards figure that she's one of the prisoners who somehow got wandered off and lost in the mines. And that's why she's taken to the prison. So, and there is a bit of a romance between her and Ridge, but also there's a lot of action, there's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of politics going on here. I love this. I highly recommend it. I would classify this book as a romantasy, even though it came out long before romantasy was a thing. But it's got a pretty strong romantic subplot, but there's also a big military political action plot as well. So I really enjoyed it, highly recommend it. Next, we have Band of Preppers by Robert J. Walker, a book number 3 on today's bestseller list, a standalone EMP thriller, and the author has been on our Free Friday list before, including last week. Alex KOROLOV read this for us because he reads all these EMP books. An EMP is an electromagnetic pulse, which is normally caused by something like a nuclear explosion or a solar flare or a heavy lightning storm, and it takes out electronics. Now, in real life, most of our infrastructure is hardened against EMPs because people know about these things. But in the fictional world, whenever there's an EMP blast, everything goes dead and civilization regresses back to like Neanderthal times immediately. So that's the premise of most of these books. Alex says that the book begins with Ross piloting a Boeing airplane across the Atlantic. Henry, his best friend from flight school, is his co-pilot, and they're chatting amicably when suddenly all the lights in the cockpit go out. In fact, the whole plane, all the power on the airplane is out, including all the backup systems. They have to make an emergency landing, and they're still 80 miles from land. Then in chapter 2, we meet Ross's wife, Daisy, who works with Henry's wife, Wendi, at a luxury boutique in the city. It's right before closing time, and suddenly all the lights go out, and then a bunch of cars outside start smashing into each other, and everyone's looking confused because their cell phones are dead. Daisy and Winnie lock the store doors because pretty soon people start bashing on the doors and, the city descends into chaos. Alex says this is as far as he got with this one because the story seems pretty formulaic compared to the typical EMP book. And he's reviewed at least 2 other stories that literally begin with a pilot flying a plane that suddenly loses power. And a lot of the books have a character who's working in a city when the power goes out and society starts to break down. Still, he says it's action-packed from the start, and he does like action-packed stories, so he might finish this book if he doesn't have anything more interesting to read. So this kind of EMP book, EMP survival book, super popular. They're often at the top of our free bestseller list. Book number 2 on today's list, First Infraction by Wendi Wilson. Here's the cover. Is the first of 3 books in the Oberon Reformatory Paranormal Romance series. The other books are $4 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. This is the author's first time on our Free Friday list, and KRISTIN read this for us. KRISTIN, what did you think of this book?
Well, I really like the book. I think it's really well written, which helps me as an editor to enjoy a book. So it is a romantic fantasy that has Rory Finley as the main character. She's a teenage fae princess, and she is on trial for murder. Now, she doesn't deny that she kills the man, but she does claim it was an accident. And the judge happens to believe her, so he sentences her to 6 months in the Oberon Reformatory for manslaughter. Then the story jumps back to the week before when Rory skips out on a summer trip to Europe. she wants to party, so she decides to fool her parents and leave them not knowing she's not in Europe. And that's when the story begins to reveal what happened to her leading up to her killing the man. Rory is a Sylphid Zephyr hybrid, so she's extremely powerful, but she doesn't want to use her powers or her status to get out of the situation that she got herself into, because doing so would create turmoil between the Fae and humans, and it would destroy all the hard work that her parents did to come to an agreement between Fae and humankind. I was hooked from the start on this. I mean, who doesn't like something starting out with being accused for murder? I thought that was really interesting. I'd love to keep reading and find out how she survives her time in the reformatory, as well as when she gets out and handles telling her parents when she's free, because I think that would be a very interesting scene or two. Since the title's First Infraction, I can only imagine that Rory's going to get into a whole lot more trouble in the subsequent books. I think that fans of fantasy are really, well, romantasy will really love this book. I probably will continue reading the book. It's just going to be a little bit down on my to be read list because I probably have about 10 books on my to be read list right now. So it might take me a while, but I do want to finish it.
All right. Then before we go on to book number 1, I want to tell people about our Patreon supporters: Greg, Lorena, Janet, Luca, Sophie, Marie, Alex, Avery, Terrence, Brad, David, Anastasia, and Amira. Thank you guys. You're awesome. We would not be here without you. Like I said, the Patreon supporters and the people who buy our merch fund this publication. So thank you so much. All right, book number 1 on today's science fiction and fantasy free bestseller list. This is the title is The Lure of Infinity by Stan Smith, and it's the first of 6 books in the Bridgers Sci-Fi Adventure series. The other books are $4 each, and they're in Kindle Unlimited. And this is the author's second time on our Free Friday list. We last year we reviewed the prequel to the series, and Terrence read this for us. Terrence, what did you think of the book?
Well, personally, I didn't really get into this. I do like the premise of people being able to visit alternate versions of Earth that feeds into the whole multiverse craze that's going on right now. A couple things though, I'm not sure like why this exists. I mean, I'm not even sure how this was allowed to exist. It seems like such a dangerous thing to do. You wonder how these visitations and these different uh, versions of Earth can end up having ripple effects. And also, I didn't think the writing was that great. It wasn't bad either. It described everything that it needed to do clearly enough, but it didn't thrill me and snare me all that much like other books I've read on this Free Friday segment. Also, I thought the protagonist was kind of generic. She's bodyguards essentially for these tourists who go on these trips to different timelines. She is a tough emotionally distant military type. I mean, I'd like to know a lot more about her. Usually I prefer my characters to be a little messy because we're all messy as human beings. The thing that interested me the most was she is assigned to help guide 3 young college / university students who are doing research for a dissertation. So I was kind of curious what exactly that dissertation is about, like what they're hoping to get from this experience. Other than that, I wasn't really that into it, so I likely won't be continuing with reading this. You're muted.
I am muted.
Right, you're telling me not to be muted.
I know.
Did
I
you
warned
go
you
and
not
mute
to be
yourself?
muted. Yes. We are not AIs. We are fallible, actual humans recording the show. So what I was saying is that I love the fact that she's emotionally distant and military matter of fact kind of character. That's my type of protagonist. So of all the books on today's list, obviously my favorite one I've already read. So this is my next favorite. That sounds like the kind of thing I would get into because I don't like romantic fantasy or YA books or about young people, but I do like hard sci-fi about alternate universes and travel between different Earths and a military, matter of fact, uncomplicated, strong women protagonists. That's my thing. All right.
Well, you should check out the Spider-Man movies from Sony's Spider-Verse movies.
The animated ones?
Yes, if you're
I
into
have-
multiverse stuff,
I have
then
not
you should
seen
check
those yet.
out.
They're definitely top of my list right after I finish watching the new Mission Impossible movie.
Okay.
All right. I want to thank you guys for being here, and I want to thank our audience for coming and joining us every Friday afternoon. We love you. We appreciate you. And we're looking forward to seeing you next Friday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.